So this session is about the 2D experience fallback. So I guess that requires first an explanation of what it is. So what we call the 2D experience is what will run on your desktop if Unity cannot. That is because the hardware or software combination is not powerful enough for the kind of user interface Unity is providing, because it's using OpenGL at its core, and old cards or machines with drivers that have issues may be unable to run Unity, unfortunately. This session is about discussing what should happen if Unity cannot run on your system. That is the kind of experience we still want to provide to the user. We call the 2D experience. And in brief, this is mostly the GNOME, the classic GNOME shell 2.x that you have currently on Ubuntu. And the other thing we want to discuss is the scenario, the details of the scenario for transitioning the user to this 2D experience in a nice way. We're coming from Maverick, where if Unity cannot run on your system, most of the time it's crashing, and thanks to Didrock's work, sometimes you also get a nice dialogue. So what we want to do is improve that dialogue and make sure that it's always what you see if Unity cannot run again on your system.
David, are we just talking about the desktop case, or are we talking about netbook as well?
So there is no more netbook or desktop, because we're aiming for having
so we basically don't care about
session.
form factor.
Exactly. Yeah. So there may be adjustments in that because of the form factor and because of the screen size and so on. The session could contain some adjustments, but mainly there's going to be one unique session where Unity is the default mode, okay. and again classical GNOME 2.x is the fallback. I don't think there is much to mention on the 2D experience itself. What we mostly would like to see is the regular GNOME panel, Nautilus desktop, indicators that we already have, having like the top and the bottom panels, again, nothing unusual. So there is a first question here in what kind of window manager, non-compositing window manager can we use for the 2D experience? So what you're using currently is Melasti. It seems that Compass could also be used in the case where neither OpenGL nor the Xcomposite extension are present. However, this has not been thoroughly tested as far as I can tell. So
I think that what needs to be done is that we need to test it properly. It's supposed to work. It's supposed to work, and it works to some degree. But you have things like it's not really been a primary use case at all. It's sort of been okay, it's cool that it works. Now let's get back to what we really want to do.
I think we can safely use Melasti, to be honest, because it's already used for GDN, isn't it?
Well, I'm asking the question.
Window manager, you can switch to window manager you want to use. So if you would want to keep it with one code base only, then we'll be able to test this one code base and use it at different places. We can do that. So GDM allows you that flexibility.
It just seems it's hard enough making one window manager work than redoing the 2D.
So yeah, I'm asking the question because the potential benefit would be that there would be just one window manager. But however, if it's creating more work and more issues than just using Melasti, I think we should just say Melasti is fine.
The way I see this, I think the long-term goal should be to do it in Compass. But I agree with you. I do not think it's worthwhile to use time on it now, because there's going to be, there's going to be so much other work you have to do.
Fine.
And it's
So-
already our fallback, so
Yeah.
I guess it just makes sense to
Fallback.
keep it with
Yes,
capacity. It's
absolutely.
well-tested code, code.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah.
So, well, I think there is a consensus. I mean, the experts, all of the experts do recommend that we keep Metast and not try to have the 2D mode of compose being used.
But when we talk about long-term using companies, we're talking about hardware that have issues, for example, or some features. This hardware is not going to change, except if, first of all, the system doesn't support the full Unity because it is missing some features in the driver.
Yeah, but drivers can get better.
Yes, but in some cases, it could also be the case that, those hardware may not change and the driver may not be improved, or just because the hardware cannot support it. By that I mean long-term copies. What does that mean? Are we going to drop this hardware? Or?
It means, it does not mean that we got other, it means that Compass should support running without OpenGL and Compass.
Yeah.
But regarding performance, do you want this kind of effects at least when running a 2D, or do you want just a light session?
You will not get most of the effect.
Yeah, I know, but the user can enable it, or I don't know what is by default, but I was thinking more about the 2D interface being something lighter than the usual. So I don't know what is the minimum requirements for that. At least on our devices that we have, it's depending on the kind of interface that we want to put it, it's kind of slow.
So the 2D interface, or the cube 2D interface, should work relatively quickly on ARM devices. The major thing we have to make sure is that the window manager we choose is going to be equally as possible.
Yeah, I mean, so this will be GNOME or whatever, and Metacity. You won't have the kind of compass effects or anything like
Yeah, okay.
that. So it
That'll
should work fine.
Real well.
You know?
Yeah, but regarding the security interface, they have the
No,
this
no,
public.
No,
That's just a
misspoke.
test. That's not.
I misspoke.
Okay.
This is the one we're talking about. Is the panel, the normal GNOME panel, and Metacity.
Okay.
And
Right.
the thing is that anything with
90 plus
2D,
one.
you're not going to be doing window management,
Okay.
windowing effects or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's just going to be
Doesn't make sense.
basically
Yeah.
cutting the battery and the CPU. And
Yeah,
everything.
for
Because you
sure.
can do it by any chance.
Just-
That's why plugins won't run without OpenGL most of the time. They're all, if you enable 2D compass mode, it's
Yeah, but that's why do you want to put compass on it? What kind of benefits do we have?
think
If we're not going to use anything.
Well,
Sorry?
I think
Same
there is
code
ever
base.
not.
Well, yeah, we just said we're not going to do that for Mali, but the only
Yeah, I know, but
benefit would
even
have
if
been
we
to have
do
the
that.
same code base that is as opposed to having to maintain two different packages and different code bases and manage bugs for different
Okay,
window
so
managers. We'd have to
Maintaining.
manage- Right.
Testing.
Because-
Yeah.
less packages,
and just the
As
energy
bugs.
that has been put
more
into
users.
trying to understand, trying to convert different settings from one window
Yeah.
manager to the other when it switch, that
Yeah.
being able to avoid that whole issue is important.
But so anyway, we're saying not finally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So, to summarize, we have a good definition of what the 2D experience is. It's mostly what we have currently running on Maverick, the desktop session. We are not changing the window manager, so we're minimizing risk. So we have a solid fallback mode. In the case where Unity is not running. So now the only thing left to explore is what should happen when Unity cannot run on your system in the different scenarios. That is, you're doing an upgrade and you're rebooting, and potentially Unity should start. How should the migration happen? That is, how do we keep enforcing the golden rule, but still provide the user with the Unity option? What happens when you're trying to install NATI on a new system with a live CD, or with the new with the regular installation mode. What happens if you have an NVIDIA or an Intel or a Radeon driver? Because, well, there are drivers we ship by default, and there are drivers we don't have, namely the NVIDIA driver, I mean the proprietary NVIDIA driver. And in this case, typically we wouldn't be able to provide the Unity experience by default with the regular live CD, right?
So for the fallback, I think that we should add some code to Unity so that if we from the start know that we can't run on that, just fallback.
Right.
So no session stuff as we have done, because it's really hard to in GDN to switch session dynamically. That's why you have currently only a dialog that say I will change for you the session, but you have to log in again. So I think we want to avoid that.
Yeah.
That means a little bit of trickling with non-session, because we have to register non-panel and other component as being respawned if it crashes. But I think it's definitely doable.
So last cycle we tried to have that. It's running in some cases, but there are still cases where the experience is just not there. So can we dive into that and try to understand why the crashes, why we were not able to determine that Unity would crash?
So first thing is software rendered. If GL is software rendered, we just know that we can't have compositing. So this is the easy case, and we just fall back.
Sorry,
So
if GL is software rendered.
So how do you intend to do that detection?
Yeah.
Because I mean, we did the same thing in 2007 when we introduced throughout the winter, and we did that detection when it did fall back in testing.
So there are different pieces involved. Maybe we should just draw them on the whiteboard and make sure in all the different situations we have everything that it takes to support the scenario.
Fallback, sure. So there's a few, before we try, there's a few things. There's chipsets that lie about what they do. That seems to be our biggest single issue. So there's two ways of handling that. The first way and the proper way is that we need to get patches into kernel, even if they're just for Ubuntu right now, and then push them upstream. That fix things, in the drive, in at least the open drivers, not the binary drivers.
But do you have the issues with closed drivers also, or it's just open?
No, it could happen with closed as well. I'm coming to the closed sense. But first things first, we shouldn't default to a Quarks file or something like that for open source stuff. We should fix the issue, right? And that's where we have to be careful that we don't make that mistake. After that, for close, if NVIDIA or ATI are reporting the wrong things, we need a Quarks file which holds this information. There's no real other way of getting around that. I mean, as people test, we'll learn more about it. There'll be information the Compass community already knows, and other upstreams will already know. We need to aggregate that and make it so if the initial launch of Unity will do a read and find out what features are available, then we can merge in the Quarks file and override the features where it makes sense. For instance, no, this chipset really can't do whatever, FBOs or something. And that's the only real way which we're going to give ourselves a chance to be able to do that. And all our GRNing has to be able to switch on and off features at runtime, basically, as much as possible.
Yes, we're going to implement features rather in fast, so that at runtime we can detect what kind of features, OpenGL features are supported on the hardware, and try to follow some specific path.
Some of that is going to require still being blacklisted for different features, because we have drivers that have very bad implementations, like they'll support something, they'll just be a bad implementation. A good example is in the video drivers that recently had the Cairo issue.
Right, exactly. So then there's open source drivers, for instance, which we can't patch that. No, it doesn't do something, because it does. It just does it really terribly. So that's when we fall back to the quirks mechanism of this chipset cannot do foo. And at runtime, we set all the options inside Unity and our rendering part, and then go. From then on, Unity will never touch shapes or whatever.
So we have this general mechanism whereby, well, depending on the driver type and the presence of quirks, we can adjust Unity. Now, can we try to review that in light of I'm running a normal desktop and I'm upgrading, or I'm installing a new desktop? So where would the quirks? So we're talking about shipping a set of quirks or quirks file. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do more discretes than necessary. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would just be
Yeah.
package.
Just a package, yeah, contains
So
those
the
data.
first issue is detection. We need to detect, we need to be to do better than what we did the previous cycle, which is to detect early.
We need to ask for testing most
So
of the
again,
time.
who's detecting? Do we detect that in the window manager?
Well, yeah, I think if we control which plugins get loaded first or whatever, we'll have to do either plugins or contact.
Okay, so there are actually two issues here. I mean, so the first is, are you going to run Compass at all? If you're going to fall back to necessity, then you don't really want to start Compass as just ask it if it can run.
So should the detection go into Unity Compass, or should it be an external module?
I think that depends.
No, no,
You
you
have-
Yeah, there's the 2D, 3D detection, and then there's how much 3D can you actually
Exactly,
do.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
So
keep that up.
So 2D, 3D would happen before Compass.
Okay.
Not, yeah.
So
Not before.
first.
At the very start of Compass.
But only
Because if we use we have already had some kind of shell script to run Compass, and it was very slow.
Yeah, performance.
So in what we have done in Lucid with Netbook
Would be
Launcher,
very-
it was at the very beginning of Netbook Launcher that we switched back to Netbook Launcher EFL. And for Maverick, it's I patch Mutter, so that at the very beginning of Mutter, I make that detection, and if it doesn't work, I switch back to another window manager.
Yeah.
That's
It would have been very nice if there was a communication about what the problem was with the shell script with us.
just
Now we have to do it again.
speed.
Yeah. That's understandable.
So that's the
it
first
launches a bunch of processes.
And can it be a Compass plugin, or should it be really at the core? At the
I
very-
think it might make sense to just make it a standalone compile plugin.
Which is what I was
So
thinking.
plugin which
Yeah, but then-
and abort. And so if we abort, we can say switch off Compass, and we can detect it's not a crash and start.
But then you're sort of using Compass as a detection tool.
Are we?
Do we want to get into that sort of game?
Yeah, you're really talking about adding additional startup time.
Yeah.
But
We really
if we wrap some Compass in a shell script, we will maybe try.
But
Yeah,
I think
but
it's like that. Doing the shell script way is for right now because we don't have the 2D fallback capabilities inside Compass as a plugin itself. But once we have that, that should be moved to Compass.
in the window manager.
Couldn't we have a small executable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That was.
and we're not
But it
running
would not
every
break,
time.
like this Linux launch. It was preventing us from debugging the scene because this was not GDM. It was not getting in the way.
No, it won't get in the way. Because if OEM used UX launch, you wouldn't be using this detection tool. You know your hardware. You wouldn't need to do fallbacks.
Yeah, and
If you, in the worst case, if you do, fine. But realistically, you know what you're shipping, so you don't need
Well, that brings up the question I was going to ask, which is, what if the test for 2D, 3D passes, so Compass can run,
Yeah.
but there's a flaw with the quirks and the reporting of the driver such that Unity
This
can't
is the second
start.
step.
Right.
So the obvious example of this is if you don't have FBO support, right? So this will result in a situation where Compass passes,
Right.
Oh.
but Unity can't.
Right.
But when you're talking about 2D, 3D tests, to me it was not only is it 3D capable, but it's also supporting all the extensions you need.
The minimal requirement.
Right, so it's Unity,
But
it's a Unity
what you
specific
mean-
test, not just.
What you mean is something I've actually seen before, is that you do all the tests are okay, great, and you start using it and it turns out the tests are just incorrect. It doesn't work anymore. So then what's the fallback?
Then the quantifier. We'll get some login path for the user and we'll
You
get
are going to
for
get
this one.
Yeah. The chances of what's going to happen is that Compass will not start properly.
Yeah.
So even if you do have quirks, I think, which is the goal in this case. But I think you'll have to prepare for the fact that we won't be able to get every scenario covered. So. But the simple solution to that is, well, if Compass doesn't start, then fall back.
There was a point in time where we were discussing, it was probably years ago by now, but we discussed doing a whitelist rather than a blacklist. Yes.
Yeah, that's going to be
So
tricky.
you kind of do a Bridger style whitelisting where you whitelist everything after a certain point of new kind of deal.
Yeah, that would work as well.
But that's sort of,
So, as long as there's an easy way to overwrite.
So, just so I went on the tangent on this 2D, 3D thing, and so what I'm, writing down is, so we're checking that 3D is available, that Unity particular extensions are there.
Right.
Should we also blacklist things? Yeah. Well, because if we do patch the drivers that are open source and have a Hertz file for NV, property driver, which is
we
yeah.
can't patch as well as proprietary.
Well, but then the blacklist is mostly NVIDIA works or not, or
No, there will be a black pulse.
so we need a blacklist. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
the policy was easy.
So we were talking before about the scenario where we don't realize that the rigor driver does not work well. It's a poor implementation, right? So when you try to log in, it's going to crash repeatedly, right? So do we just say how many times you crashed and then?
Well, I wanted something a bit cleverer than that. When we, the thing is when we try and do something, we want to at least report where we crashed, right? And then if we do a restart, we automatically blacklist that feature. I'm figuring out how this would work in actual real life, but in my head it's brilliant.
We use it on the CD
In my head it's
release.
just awesome. But what it would mean is it would give us a little bit of, it would be a way for us to learn about the card, right? For user experience is crap, but for the next 5 months we can have this similarity, learning stuff. And then we could have an apport bug file which with the information, with the chipset information. That would be really cool.
So Sam has a good idea. There's,
Yeah.
it's a heavier test, but you wouldn't have to repeat it all the time. If you make something that,
Yeah.
a simple rendering test,
Yeah.
render out the memory, check it.
Do that, do one FBO thing,
So
and do a few others that cause
Yeah.
problems.
So you want
Each
to-
time
it's essentially the same.
saving your steps, what you were doing next,
Yeah.
going back.
There's an issue of dealing with, okay, well, what happens when the user upgrades their drivers? It might work now.
Yeah, but so are we talking about the runtime test that we're going to put in the release, or are we talking about the runtime test we want to put during the
Between
development
slow
cycle?
Well, this was for more development cycle.
Okay,
And we
so-
remove it at release time when the drivers stop changing.
So we need 2 versions of that.
And we'd update it with the driver.
So this would actually give us like, if we can get a feedback mechanism into this, we can get a good list going.
Right, so we use Apple to get the feedback. So we did crash, but wait, let us crash a couple of more times, let us do some tests, and then report the bug once we know exactly what this chipset can do. And that's how we keep our quirks file up to date.
Sam, does K-Win do this every time, or? I mean,
Do it once.
they store it after they do it once, but did they do it on production systems?
Yeah. Every time it starts up.
If you're worried about upgrading drivers, you can always just have Jockey clear the cache.
Yeah. I agree. Do it through Jockey, 'cause how often are you going to upgrade drivers?
Well, there may be a new Xorg and Intel suddenly decides.
The other thing you can do is you detected, okay, it's not working, and then the only time you try to enable it again is when the user goes and does it again, so you do the testing.
Right. But I still wouldn't do it every time you log in.
No.
Yeah, find a thing like
Well,
Jockey or.
Apparently one of the K-Win
It's
guys.
fine
is
for
Some
development.
just test how fast it is. If it's slow,
Yeah.
then
If it's Really fast.
But until Alpha 2, it's fine. There's no big deal about having it. It'll give
Okay.
us so much useful
No, I
information,
understand that. I'm like, open
Question.
presentation, but-
and then we can switch around.
So I've captured the need for having two versions of this detection module, the release node, which is going to be mostly reading the queries and doing like checks based on the GL capacities, but not actually doing GL checks to slow down the process, and the development version that is going to do the calls. This development version, if it's doing the calls to exercise the actual GL features, how different is that from the DBT scripted mode or automated mode?
Right.
Isn't that like,
No.
no?
Two.
Because
One is checking that the platform didn't break Unity in nasty little ways. The other one's, which is debug mode, and the other one's checking that the drivers are capable of running Unity and how much of Unity is capable of running.
But it's, aren't you going to use some bits of the to be as close as possible to what Unity does in order to detect for the debug
We'll use the rendering parts. We won't create a quick list. There's no we'll more worry whether we can do FBOs, whether we can do shaders.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that hard to create a test application that stresses the same path.
Yeah, but it's two different things.
What
Even
do you
if we
use?
do create a quick list, which is fine, but
Yeah.
it's two different things. The other one would be a real-time testing of Unity, and the other thing is just testing rendering parts.
But so you want an executable before running compis, which does that. And it will slow down the boot time again.
So that's another point I want to get to.
Part of it.
Yeah. So it can, because just before we told it's a separate binary, so I just want to.
But do we need that like every
I think
time?
it should be.
No, we should
Or-
store it.
And or yeah, right.
And we do it on certain occasions.
Provided the hardware doesn't change, and I don't know how we can figure out that the hardware has changed or not. We should not run that in every boot.
I'm sure there's a way of figuring out the package. That's
I think Cord was mentioning that, what if you upgrade your video driver? But that's probably like 3% of the cases. I mean,
Not
it's actually
during
a very
development.
small percentage.
during
Which is
You're going to change the video card all the time.
As the kernel updates, you may have
Yeah.
suddenly something.
Oh, okay.
start
We're
working
talking about
on.
the drivers for
What we can do is
swap out your video card.
Right, so drivers.
the approach we can take is to consider that apparently it would be like a coin case, and maybe in this case it would be acceptable to crash and get back a digital mode and let the user use this 2D version. I don't really like the idea of letting Unity crash, but
Can we just toggle the setting?
so if there is document way at the platform level to know that the hardware has changed, we'll use that. If not,
You mean the drivers change?
the hardware or the drivers have changed. Yeah. In this case, we need to redo the detection. And
But what we can do, we can just do that. So this is the script, just touch a file to say, oh, I'm done, I've done the detection. And when you install a driver version, even if it's just a simple fix,
it removes the
it removes the files in poststance.
Reruns the test. Yeah.
And so next time you start reading compis,
And what about the hardware? Because
Yes.
the rare case where
If you're actually switching out hardware, right?
you're the one to blame.
No.
No, not you.
If
The
you're actually
users.
switching out hardware,
It was a warranty.
it will go through either the 2D thing, say if you put in a brand new NVIDIA chip and you don't have the right drivers, it'll fall back to 2D automatically anyway.
Yeah.
And if it's more than that, then
it will not be your only problem to do that.
Yeah, I know,
To
you
be
have-
honest, you will have more issues
Will
with
there be
dog
that?
and stuff like
9
that.
times out of 10 you
So-
need fail-safe.
Currently, we have that like configuration appearance properties thing. If we have something like that, when they switch out hardware, they could go in there and try to re-enable it. And then if it would do the test again, and then if it failed,
Well, the minute they install new drivers, it would touch the
Right.
Okay, remove the file and redo the test again on the next reboot anyway.
We have to patch the CApplet for Unity.
right.
So I think it would come in as part of
Okay.
standard.
Hey,
But we need to, at release time, we need to have only, is it Unity capable check?
Enjoy that.
And then store it.
And then cache that result.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay,
So-
so we do
But
have
until
a
Alpha
document
2,
plan.
I can't promise that's what's not going to happen because we
That's
need a
fine.
lot of data.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that clear? Do you want me to record something
Yeah,
else?
please. Yeah, can you record the learning stuff with touching file?
Yes, I can. Okay.
And
so-
I just written for so DOM advanced properties we have to patch it for the unit experience to be able to switch.
Okay. So process.
Or we can. Do you think that it's still relevant to have DOM advanced properties or just to have a session in GDN to force the 2D experience? Like you have Ubuntu desktop, in GDN and the 2D experience, rather than just having the C applet and the patch we have done to say, do I want to switch to compis or fall back to more effects, less effects?
It's nice to be able to switch in a
I'm
section.
not sure we
The
want
only
to go
thing
to
I'd
that
say
path.
it's different sessions is because the amount of visual UI change.
Yeah,
true.
and
Before it was
it
different,
wasn't
it was
true
still
with-
2 panels, but you didn't
Exactly.
have shadows and funky effects
Yeah.
anymore, right?
Yeah, so
So it was
maybe
more
this
switching
time-
the effects and how.
This
and-
time it's an actual
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
direct
That's right.
change.
That
What's
does
the
mean,
question?
it does mean if you log in and it doesn't work, then you go back to DDN. And then
No, it won't do that.
You can make
We
it do
still
it
want to-
automatic.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
So we still fall back cleanly, but
Yeah, it just how to force. Let's say I want to just have non-panel 1 hour, so adding a session in GDN is really easy for that. I don't think we should go to the GNOME appearance property patch we have. I think
Yeah.
it's not relevant in that case. Too much different things.
No. Too
Yeah. Okay,
different.
so I'll just say remove that patch. We are just using to remove the patch.
So if we support, if we detect when the hardware has changed, and also we detect when the drivers change, okay.
Yeah.
Let's say a new driver comes, it's being updated, everything seems to be okay, it has the right potential features, everything seems to be, but there's a bug.
We will have a bug and we will update the
Yeah.
proc file and
Yeah.
Okay, my question would be, even, let's say, the driver could even crash, okay, the testing module.
you will try to respawn and we crash again and
Yeah.
respawn.
And so, one question is how we have a term, how can we help them not to fall into this
Yeah.
trap?
Well, you can catch the crash and delete something.
We
Do
still
you
have
think
to
then-
enable respawning, but maybe we still have to enable respawning because
Yeah.
crash happens. Sometimes you respawn
Yeah,
and
you shouldn't perpetually respawn.
crash happens. Even in panels sometimes it's crashing, and so you
Yes,
just
You
see the
should have
panel.
a timeout.
Yeah,
So
but-
if you
Yeah,
respawn
if it's
5
times
that
in
many
yeah.
things, you should then go, uh-oh, I've got
Mhm.
2D for you.
So
Yeah.
cleaning, so I guess the 2D mode, we don't need to have that anymore in the whiteboard. We just said, well, not there. It's in the, it's attached to the blueprint anyway. And so what do you want me to record?
Just what we just told. Yeah, if it's we should be able to detect that if it's respawning, let's say 5 times in
Yeah.
less than
Yeah.
3 minutes. Let's say we fall back now to
So
the
in
2D
release,
mode.
in release mode or
Yeah, in
dev
release
mode?
mode. In release mode.
And who's going to detect that?
It's still this small module, I guess. We can have a counter and
Okay.
just increment something very small. I don't think it's a lot of,
That should be a nice thing to add to Canard session.
In any case, we'll have to patch down session because we have to say that that component is now the new window manager. So we will have also to patch down session for that. I record that also. And also we have to have a look because we have a big issue with the session, which is it's when you save your session, it's saving your window manager, your panel, all the required components.
Yeah.
So currently I had to patch GNOME session for the UNE sessions because if you go to the desktop session, you save your session, it saves here you have, for instance, compis or with GNOME panel and it tries first before running Mutter. if it tries to run compies and no panel, and so then when you try to run motor, it just say, oh, I have already a window manager, so I don't care. And we will have this kind of issue.
So is there anything?
We have to go further with NOM session. I've already made some initial patch, but we have to.
So NOM session is going to host that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the detection, but
No.
we have some work to do with NOM session for registering components.
So can you clarify what NOM session should be patched for?
Basically, yeah, just a NOM session after the fact time we just mentioned it.
It's
In fact,
a little patch.
the issue with NOM session is that it's recording what are the required components, like window manager, panel, and stuff like that. So when we switch from session, as now, you save your session, you will say, oh, my current window manager is compies, my current panel is no panel. If you switch back, for instance, to use the UNI session, it will first start compies and no panel. And then when we go to motor, it just say, oh, I have already a window manager, so I don't need it. So right now there is a patch for that.
There's a patch?
Yeah, but it's not a patch which is acceptable upstream, to be honest.
Oh.
Okay, so patch
You the links to the button.
Okay, do you have an idea to how to do that properly? Just not saving required components in the save session? Does it make sense?
Makes sense?
No, it doesn't make sense because you might need to give the session ID to Metacity, for example, so that it remembers the position of Windows.
Yeah.
So, what we might want to do in the end anyway is to have some kind of profiles when we save a session. So it could be a profile for GNOME Shell, for Classic GNOME, for Unity. And when you log in, you just end up in this profile.
Okay. So I will file a bug upstream.
Yeah, that's something
Upstream will be
that
expensive.
we need to do for GNOME Shell anyway.
Okay.
Okay. So to summarize, I think we have a good plan for detecting whether Unity can run or not, and we have identified the pieces to make sure we do fallback to the 2D experience, right? Steve, we haven't discussed where the dialogue would go. The dialogue that presents the user was the bad news. On the system.
We want a dialogue. We don't want to fall back transparently.
We do want some user visible
Snippet
notice.
notification.
Mhm.
What about the notification?
Yeah.
It needs to
That's
be a
very
dialogue.
timing
It needs to
based.
be, the user needs to realize what's happening and confirm that, well, he is ready.
And it's nice to have those information, like, if you may have compatible drivers, but you may need to install them. You can see jockey.
Yeah.
So it means that
The
if I have
experience-
an NVIDIA card,
Yeah.
the first time I run the
Well,
Ubuntu lab
maybe-
session, I will have that dialogue.
I don't know. Maybe let's take the general case. So what we'd like to happen is something like
We could special
we detect that the current hardware cannot run Unity. While we're transitioning to GNOME 2.x, there should be a dialogue popping up on the screen that explains that the hardware and drivers cannot support the full Ubuntu interface and so on.
Why?
Why don't we just put up a simple thing that's like optimizing for your performance of your system or something like that?
Because they may just have to install drivers from jockey.
Yeah, the design guidelines are that we should tell the user about what's happening and make that visible.
No, I understand. You don't fail soundly. I'm just wondering.
Exactly.
We have to get into the technical explanation of Unity will not run in your system.
I don't think it would say Unity.
So-
the full experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, so full
Because
experience.
that's design's going to come out with a profile.
Exactly, the exact wording of the presentation evolved,
But it needs a bit of
but
helper text just to say you may just, jockey is there, you may just need to install.
it's not an application, it's a dialogue that will contain more information for the user to realize what's happening. Where do we put this dialogue? in the general case, and then we'll go into
It's a really good question.
the live CD, the installation, and all.
I think we'll figure that out and we'll try to do it.
As in, where else?
Oh, no, that's a point.
No, we're in the GNOME session, Unity, where do we put that?
No, I think honestly, when we try to do it,
Yeah,
we'll
I
figure
see.
out the best place to
It's the best place to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bit.
Let's keep the dialog box in mind
Yeah,
while we
so
finish
I-
exploring the
I
different
did,
scenarios.
Yeah.
Just use.
So we want that even in the lab session. So when I install now Ubuntu on my NVIDIA card, I will get that in the lab session. If I use the lab session, I install Ubuntu, I will get that also the first time I restart.
I don't know what we're going to do about
I
it.
don't know.
Seriously, right now,
Yeah.
for the live session, it seems like we need to do something a bit more clever. So,
The
because
problem
that's
is-
the thing that's going to give the best experience. And it's unfortunate that we can't just ship those drivers. So let's figure that out. Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we'll ship the driver. No,
But I think it will be
quite
short
beyond
for
that.
Native.
What I mean to say is that we could probably do something more clever than
We
show
can't
that
ship
thing.
the driver.
I know.
We can't. Okay.
Maybe
yeah.
we'll
Can't
know
really accept
something.
that.
Not for Native. Reasonable.
Okay. Then we just keep it
Just to
say
your
again.
face. And
So I was counting.
Yeah.
And just
we need to do something special for NVIDIA on live CD.
okay. So yeah, I think we're like and find the different factors for which there could be differences between the normal, the general scenario and like corner cases. So NVIDIA plus live CD is the only combination of factors that need to be addressed, or
The
that is
video first boot also.
right. So
Yeah.
can we list them?
So the installation. Well, yeah, we need to figure that out with the
Mhm.
installer, which allows you to do something.
no.
Yeah,
So
so-
we discussed that during the lunch. And the better place for that is Jockey, to pump Jockey and to save.
So it's not going to be part of the
of the
installation.
installer. Yeah. We discussed that.
What are we saying?
So-
Really? So
I thought it was going to be part of the installer, where you know how it can connect to the internet and ask you questions if you want to
They don't
update
want a
stuff.
special case and to
Yeah.
add another,
We already have a hook to say, do you want to install proprietary
Yeah,
components?
I'm just
it's
talking about
already a
drivers.
pop-up.
Right.
Jockey is already a pop-up. So
Yeah,
So it may have been more
so-
streamlined if it was part of the actual installation.
If that's part of the installation, if it pops up on the first run, then you're gonna have to not only tell them, hey, if you install this, you get it, but to get it, you're gonna have to log back out.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out the NVIDIA
Yeah.
situation.
There's a bit of a delay there, isn't it? Also on the first boot, because the delay is actually now I tell situation when people start using it and then they get pop-up.
Exactly.
So that needs to be faster on NVIDIA systems.
So
Otherwise, I would just assume this is just a load.
Oh, you lost it.
I love
someone say
No, but you still have it, isn't it? You can still save it.
Yeah.
Screenshot it quick. Screenshot. Save doesn't work.
Oh no, because I saved it already, so it's small. Can I save a copy, please?
Just
You want me to save a copy? I can save a copy.
So was there anything else about 2D? We're not going to change the panels or anything like that.
The panel will be slightly changed so that you don't have the applications
It's
slices
just
and so
the
on.
buttons.
Just be the Ubuntu logo just to mimic the Unity, you have the second frame.
The NVIDIA case, because we figure out what we do with NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a significant portion of our user base.
Well,
Is there
are we gonna
a
be
risk critical sync?
I guess my first question here is, are we gonna be shipping NV or Nouveau?
No,
Before it's not
no,
mentioned.
no.
Yeah.
In-
At the org session, we decided
It
not
was
to
quite
ship
clear
it.
that it's
There's
not
no
really
NV
yet.
anymore, is there? It's just
There's just Visa, yeah.
So
Yeah, NV hasn't been maintained.
for
a while.
these
They dropped it.
capable
They just said
for-
if you want 2D, use Visa. We're not
Oh, yeah.
interested.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well, I think their actual working condition is if you want to do, use Nouveau.
No.
No.
Did they say Visa?
So, what were you saying to Fox about what the session will be like in
What?
You were saying about the panel.
Yeah, the panel. The only difference will be the the first applet. You have applications, place, and system now.
Right.
You will have just you have another applet which just has the Ubuntu logo.
Yeah.
So the circular frame. You click on it and you have all the three menu collapsed in one.
Underneath that.
So it just to mimic the Unity experience.
So back to-
use like menu output and menu bar and video.
So
Can you use menu bar as well?
no. I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
thinking
what you
of-
mean.
why not? Yes.
Yeah.
Why not the add menu to
Go for it.
Okay. Fine. So can you
So, no, I
Okay,
cannot,
well,
but NVIDIA.
I'll be back.
NVIDIA. What I want to check is whether
usable.
there is some odd complex problem to solve for NVIDIA,
Yeah, that's the kind of problem.
right? But
No, I can't take anything.
Sorry, the 3D experience.
Sorry, we have 10 minutes left. NVIDIA to me is a I don't know what's going to happen. So I'd like to have the start of the plan on how we manage the engineering.
We need to think about it a little bit, figure out what's going on. We can't have a plan right now.
It's probably going to be
so that
everyone
we
and
phrase
Novo
that.
groups will be able to ship it, and Novo is actually capable of running
But
it.
everything is
Can-
separate.
Novo's not coming into the cycle.
I don't know, I was saying next cycle, so this is really going to be a one
Next
cycle
cycle.
thing.
But so can we then identify the cases where NVIDIA is an issue that, like, I think we had not that discussed, but just recording that it's an issue when installing a new system,
And when?
And in the live session.
in the live session, and when upgrading, or what about the golden rule? And
No, when you upgrade, normally you keep the driver you have. So if you use VESA, you still have VESA. But it's like a new installation if you want. We can
And
put it
so
there.
in the case of an upgrade, we haven't discussed that, by the way. So what happens in case of
In an
an
upgrade,
Yeah.
it'll touch that file that we spoke about later.
Yeah.
And if they have managed to break NVIDIA, then we'll do the retest and we'll fall back properly.
I think we won't touch
So we
that
have all
file.
the
You can
pieces
put
in
the
place.
first time
Okay.
constant. The check.
I can't
Yeah.
imagine
Oh, yeah.
if you actually get the NVIDIA driver, and because it works, I can't see a situation where you can't really run it.
Is it back?
Because it
Comes
generates.
back, yeah. But
It's decent.
So there's three things. First, obviously it's not installed by default.
Yeah.
So live
I
CD,
saved it
after
just
you
when it went
install
down,
it,
and we all-
and when it would be installed but not working is during development, where we change the kernel on it or change X on it, and it hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah.
And for those cases, because we've changed X, we
Yeah.
touch the file.
We touch the file. Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking if my biggest issue with NVIDIA is actually the speed of telling me that you need to get the extra drivers. And I think if you can't get the speed, I think it's better to get the box saying we're checking,
Did,
because then you don't start using your computer.
So
did you note that?
what do I record? Yes.
Make jockey quicker at popping up for NVIDIA.
I don't make it quicker or make it very obvious that you should wait until I'm done.
Popping 2 Ps?
Well, realistically, it only offers one of two choices. So
Is there an English?
for NVIDIA, one or two driver choices. So it's not a big deal if it just pops on and doesn't check on that. That's easy.
No, I just mean that you don't want the situation where you start using the computer on the while checking.
No, that's what I'm saying. It
Yeah.
shouldn't need that bit level of check.
Yeah.
We'll get jockey up quicker on NVIDIA systems.
NVIDIA is just, is it an NVIDIA chip?
Well, no,
NVIDIA
it's
just
two
released
drivers.
Optimus.
Sorry?
NVIDIA released Optimus earlier this year, which is hybrid switching.
Yeah.
Well, there's no support in that.
Right, so if we pop up Jockey, because Invoke doesn't support Unity, then someone installs it, the laptop won't boot any longer. It won't, X won't start when NVIDIA's proprietary driver is installed.
With
With Optimus, right.
Really?
Right. Because it starts with Intel, and then the hardware switches to NVIDIA during the boot.
Right. So, but they have, the Intel is the default VGA out.
But it switches during the boot automatically. The architecture switches
Right.
while it's booting.
Yeah.
And
So-
the X breaks when you're booting.
That's how does Unity affect that?
Well, if they install NVIDIA's proprietary driver,
Yeah.
X won't work anymore.
So the only thing that, their only option is based
But now,
Never.
Nouveau works, but NVIDIA doesn't.
Right.
But I think if they enable Optimus stuff, they would know that they've done that, right?
I don't know if
I'm
it-
talking about standard Ubuntu.
Optimus is a hardware thing.
Right.
So this falls under
If
jockey.
only Nouveau supports it, then it's obviously a driver thing as well, right? So
Well,
what I'm
the
saying
driver's
is-
involved in like the handoff.
But what I'm saying is if we're not going to use Nouveau in Ubuntu at all, it's just going to be Vesa, it's not going to be Nouveau.
Yeah, they're not going to get Nouveau when they go to anyway. They're going to get basic.
So and then they install binary drivers, then it'll just be like normal.
So it's really a jockey issue. So when it comes up, jockey needs to identify that, oh, this is an Optimus system, and NVIDIA blob driver won't work with software on the road.
Right, okay. That would work. But they don't get Unity.
They won't get Unity either way.
Right, okay.
Optimus.
The Optimus goes down.
NVIDIA technology will switch between
Yeah.
Intel.
Optimus is, that's what he's saying.
Supported, but the cards are
So does
they're
that
always
mean
on
that-
NVIDIA. Aren't they?
No,
Or they're
no.
always on Intel.
That's what the
From
MacBooks
Linux.
are like.
Does that mean
Optimus
that no
is-
MacBook will be able to run Unity?
And hold on.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is those new chipsets.
Because they have their own technology altogether.
Yeah.
But NVIDIA Optimus is NVIDIA's own technology.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
It doesn't properly switch.
you're saying their own driver doesn't support it yet.
And will not support it in Linux.
And they,
So what happens if you, okay, so what, if you don't touch Nouveau, you have one of these chipsets and you have Vesa, and then you install NVIDIA's binary driver,
This
what
is
happens?
X won't start crashing.
Because it's on Intel, or,
Because it's on until it tries to switch at some point during the boot process.
and what
So
happens?
every laptop starts with NVIDIA. I'm sorry, every laptop
Intel.
starts with Intel.
Right.
During the boot process, it automatically switches over to NVIDIA.
So if you just remove Unity from the equation as well, what happens? What would happen currently inside Ubuntu? It would just crash.
If you did what?
If you just installed Ubuntu normally.
If you install Ubuntu, if you install Meerkat today on an Optimus machine and install a proprietary driver, it won't boot.
so when you say on boot, you're talking on X startup or on kernel startup?
I don't know.
Seems like it'd be an X.
I think it's the X version.
So this is something Jockey needs to solve then, right?
So yeah, this is a jockey issue. What I was saying.
And yes, Unity won't run on. If you can't get to X, yeah.
It's Unity, that's saying that Unity won't run on any Optimus-based hardware.
Well, so NVIDIA is.
If Nouveau supports a very basic 3D implementation. which-
So-
But why doesn't
But
NVIDIA
that-
or Nouveau work in?
Nouveau actually works on cockpits.
Yeah.
And it supports FBOs.
Yes.
It
Seven's
should.
running.
Yeah, but we're not going to.
Yeah.
But it's, we can't, there's not really much of
Sounds
for
so
discussing
far.
it because it's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
No, but the people with Optimus cards, I'm pretty sure, would go out and figure
Yeah.
out how to make it
But-
work in that.
I'm sort of surprised that, is it an official statement from NVIDIA that they won't add fix the drivers?
We should probably just
That is
follow.
interesting in itself.
Yeah. We're not going to solve it here.
Hmm? Sorry?
We're not going to solve the problem here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we recorded that's the Optimus version. Thanks for participating in the session.
Thanks, Sam.